many different pension pots. I've got some savings, but they're very, very small amounts. And I'm having real difficulty finding anyone to give me some advice who I can understand or even to give me some advice in the first place. My income's not that high, probably what's called a low income. My pension pots are probably very small. And I get the distinct feeling I've contacted IFAs and even if I can get them to reply to me, their expectation is that I have a huge pension pot for six-figure sums, and I'm just feeling rather paralyzed.
My name is Leslie, and I turned 74 last year, and I started thinking about possibly getting some advice from a financial advisor because I wanted to work out how I should use the assets that I have in my pension pot, which is the self-invested traditional pension instead. I'm only in what I would call a mid-range of pension savers. In fact, many of the financial advisors will give a minimum amount of assets that they would require before they will even speak to you. If you have anything less than £25,000, or some of them also say £50,000. To be honest, after doing quite a bit of spade work, I ended up throwing in the towel. I was distinctly unimpressed.
Leslie and Pat, just two of many listeners who contacted wanting financial advice but not getting it. Well, listening to them is naturally helpful for the land account but nothing else, Pat's in state pension, the small amount of savings, Leslie has more, but TSIP barriers too. Are they typical of people?
Carried out our research that was with over 2,000 adults and over 200 advice professionals. We found that 9% paid for financial advice in the past 2 years. That's down from 11% last year. We also found that there are folks that aren't turning clients away, unfortunately.
Yeah, so it's getting harder. And you say 1 in 5 turned away people less than 25,000, but Pat said some people need a six-figure sum, and the quick search I did on a couple of websites, nothing was below 50,000, and one was asking, two or three actually, £250,000. One said he would take people with any amount, but it was restricted, so that's not really intended advice. Why are they such?
If someone came to you with so I think that is kind of borne out from your searches.
Government's plans also include banning exploitative zero-hour
Adults at the moment, but the under 18s are also getting paid significantly less. So it'll be interesting to see what this looks like going forward. But at the moment, the national living wage is £11.44 per hour, which is a big jump from the current 18 to 20 national minimum wage, which is £8.60. So if you've got, for example, a 17-year-old who is potentially going to get this increase, that ends up being quite a lot of money for them. It really ends up being something along their lines of, I think it's about £5,000 a year if they're working full time and they get this sort of £2.84 an increase.
Now, there's also this thing called the real living wage, just to confuse everyone, which is set by the Charity Living Wage Foundation. And that is even slightly higher, isn't it? £12 an hour,
Yes, it is.
£13.15 in London. Do you think the government might adopt that?
I think they might look to that certainly for guidance, because the Living Wage Foundation has done a lot of work there as well, and the way that they calculate that is that they use this thing called a basket of goods methodology. So they take into consideration everyday costs like the weekly food shop, household bills, and that's what they base this real living wage on, which arguably is the rate that people do need to live on nowadays.
Yes, and that fulfills the promise that Davis made that it would be a genuine living wage that you could live on. Now, you mentioned 18 to 20-year-olds and possibly 16 and 17-year-olds all getting more money. What does that do to differentials? Because if I'm sort of 24, which I wasn't, I'm not, if I was 24 and there was somebody of 17 or 18 with no experience, I'd feel a bit peeved if they got the same money as me.
Yes, you may well feel that, but essentially if someone is in there, and if we talk about adults particularly over 18s, if you are doing the work, then you should be getting paid fairly for that, and I appreciate that, experience does come into it, but then I think that employers will need to address that perhaps in other ways, and to simply pay people less based on what their age is, you could end up with potentially some discrimination there as well.
Yeah, no, I see that. Now, we heard from Kerry, she has 2 zero-hours contracts, which she really values for the flexibility to begin with things. The government says it will ban exploitative zero-hours contracts, but could it do that and leave Kerry and others free to work the hours they choose?
Potentially. I mean, we've heard about this word exploitative, but they've actually not defined it at all, so we don't know at the moment, does exploitative mean all zero-hour contracts? Is Labour taking the view that all zero-hour contracts should therefore be banned? But then, for workers who really like these and the flexibility is beneficial, and Labour's acknowledged that as well. They've said, we know that not all people who work on zero-hour contracts would necessarily be classed as vulnerable to this. They want to allow that flexibility as well. So I think rather than kind of outright banning them, they might want to address the problem, and really looking at those who are very much at risk of being exploited with the opportunity to perhaps move on to a contract which does reflect their regular hours, and the ones who want to enjoy flexibility can maybe leave matters as they are.
And can I ask you very, very briefly, they've also said they bring in employment rights from day one instead of having to wait 2 years. Very briefly, how big a change would that be?
That's quite a big change. I think many businesses are obviously already aware of the requirement for employees to have, in most cases, at least 2 years continuous service to get an unfair dismissal claim into the tribunal. They're talking about potentially making that a day one right, so that is very significant, huge change. In the last 50 years, we've never really had anything like that. There's always been some kind of period where you need to have service to get an unfair dismissal claim through.
Thanks, we'll have to wait and see exactly what the government proposes. And also in the King's speech, we're expecting announcements on rented housing, and on Wednesday's Moneybox Live, Felicity Hannah will be looking at what might change for tenants. Finally be banned. What about affordability of rents? And if you're a landlord, how do you feel about these plans? Let us know your questions and comments. Email moneybox@bbc.co.uk and leave a number if you can. Now, many of us run their lives from their mobiles, and often that includes their banking. But it's becoming clear that it's all too easy for thieves to grab the phone while it's unlocked and then steal some or all of the money from the banking apps before the victim can stop them. Digital bank Monzo is just the latest to introduce some new security measures to try to stop this growing crime. Moneywatch reporter Dan Whitworth has been investigating. Dan.
Well, Paul, according to recent figures from UK Finance, last year there were more than 20,000 victims of mobile phone fraud. That's up nearly 2/3 from just the year before. The amount stolen from those victims was more than £45 million, up by 1/3. So both huge increases. Now, one of those victims is a man that we're calling Lewis. He had his phone stolen by a pickpocket whilst on a night out last year. Police say the thieves spied on Lewis beforehand to watch him enter his PIN. So when they stole his phone, they were able to unlock it. And it was just a case of accessing his banking apps before they were able to steal more than £7,000 in just a few hours.
My heart dropped when I realised that all that money that everyone had saved up for me had gone. It was really heartbreaking, really. It put me down for quite a while. The money was for after uni to help me maybe like get a flat or something like that. But some of it again was to help me at uni because having rent and stuff like that while I was living there. So it really set me back because it meant I would have to rethink my finances and everyone else living at home.
I mean, rethink your future.
Yeah, it was horrible. It really affected me mentally because that was a lot of money, especially because I was going to uni and I'd saved up some myself for that from working, and it forced me into a job where I'd get more money, but it wasn't really a nice job. I was working nights, and that affected my social life a lot as well because I didn't really get to spend much time in the day with anyone. It was just probably like me at night on the days off.
Gosh, a horrible experience for poor Lewis, and an example of how devastating this crime could be. Now, Apple has introduced new features on modern iPhones to secure it against this type of theft, and I was the guinea pig when Dan explained how I could make my phone safer using Apple's new stolen device protection.
First thing you need to do, go to settings. I'm going to do this step by step, Paul, so even you can follow it.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, settings. I'm on settings.
Tap Face ID and passcode.
Oh yeah, scroll down for that, and there it is.
Yes, yeah. Now click on that, and you'll have to enter your passcode. Your face won't do it this time, Paul. And then you should see the option of stolen device protection turn on or off.
Oh yes, it's off.
Right, now it's on for every single person until you choose to turn it on, because it's an opt-in service. So basically, if you click that little button and you'll activate it.
Yeah, stolen device protection is on. Now, Dan, you were listening to that little trial we had earlier. The whole thing took us about 6 minutes, which isn't long to protect your money, is it? But you have to opt in, like I just did, and say if you want this protection always on, or just automatically coming on when you're away from familiar places like your home or where you work. Now, when it is on, what does it actually do?
Okay, so if stolen device protection is on, you have to use Face ID to access passwords that are stored on your iPhone. Also, crucially, there's an hour-long delay before you're allowed to change key security settings like, for example, your Apple ID password or your iPhone passcode to unlock your phone or change or remove Face ID. The idea is that would provide an important delay before criminals could access your financial apps if they'd stolen your phone.
Thanks, Dan. Well, what about other developments in this area? Who's done what?
Well, the digital bank Monzo has introduced 3 new security measures. One of them a bit similar to Apple's, but again, you have to opt in to set them working. And Revolut, which is not a bank, of course, which a lot of people use for storing and moving their money, has what it calls wealth protection. But again, it's opt-in, so it won't work unless you take steps to turn it on.
Thanks very much, Dan, for that. And listening to that, in our Salford studio is Anish Chauhan, the founder and director of Equilibrium Security Services. Anish Chauhan, what do you make of these developments? They're good. Do they go far enough?
They are definitely good. So it's absolutely what financial organisations should be doing. You know, the known location thing is really good. You know, we all, as we said, use everything on our mobile phones, and having that ability to, in inverted commas, leave your wallet at home is really important, because if you're out on in a bar or a club or unfamiliar surroundings, you can secure your device so it can't be easily accessed. Another one of them is the trusted contacts, which is one of Monzo's services. That's really good. So if anyone is elderly or susceptible to being tricked into transferring money, having that second person to authenticate is really important.
Right. But should they automatically be in place? I mean, I had to opt into it. I'm sure those people don't know about it, never mind opting into it. Shouldn't they be there automatically so you can opt out, but it's there if you don't?
Yeah, they should. But I guess in some degree, from the financial institution perspective, they're probably trying to make sure that, because if you restrict somebody's access to money, they've just gone to go and purchase a new car and they're about to transfer £10,000 and they're stranded and they can't enable it, and they can't, I guess that's what the banks are trying to avoid.
Yes. And what about the high street banks? I mean, these are sort of newer devices and banks. Are they following the digital banks like Monzo to protect our money?
Well, you've kind of hit the nail on the head there. They're following the digital banks. Those should be challenger banks really in some regard, and actually what they're doing is kind of flipping the other way around. So some of the high street, the bricks and mortar banks aren't really doing. They're kind of almost to some degree doing what the regulators are kind of mandating them to do. So if they are held liable, they've got their hands up in the air saying, look, we did what we were told to do. So they're kind of almost keeping themselves.
Yeah. And we also heard from Lewis, didn't we? He had more than £7,000 stolen, but it took him 6 months of fighting, and it wasn't until Moneybox got involved that he actually got his money back. Are banks typically refusing to reimburse people for these thefts?
I think it just underlines my point that's made there, actually. Yeah, I think so to some degree, and unless somebody like Moneybox gets involved, then yeah, they're probably trying not to. They're probably hiding behind the fact that they follow regulation.
Yes. So the regulation, as I understand it, is that if they're unauthorised fraud, they should be refunded.
Yeah, but the unauthorised part is probably the little tricky part. So in some of the scenarios, it's like, well, actually, if somebody was shoulder surfing, got somebody's phone, entered their PIN, by their definition, that was authorised. So then the customers get the big one.
So are they doing enough?
No, I guess the short answer is
So I thought that would be your short answer.
Yeah, no, they're not doing enough, and I think they need to be following suit, like organisations like things that are really putting the customer in the driving seat again. Making those things, making them do it more. Almost not victim blaming, making sure that we're on. Yeah, the bank should be on the customer side, because without the customer, they don't. So
well, absolutely. And just briefly, are any of these developments a substitute for taking care when you've got your phone out in a public place?
No, absolutely not. I mean, really, I guess there's an inherent belief that these devices are secure, because they are. They're not unhackable, but they're trying to secure them from being hacked. But equally, once you're in, you're in. So you've got to really make sure that you can't get access to them.
Anish Chauhan, thanks. And I must say, although the money in my phone banking app is hopefully protected, I'll still be very cautious about where and when I use my phone outside. Now, if you get child benefit and you have a child who's around 16 years old or more, then you must take action, or the child benefit you get from them will stop. Nearly 1.5 million parents should have received a reminder from HM Revenue and Customs already about this, but some letters may not arrive until Wednesday. If you have one of them, then you must respond to keep the child benefit. Catherine Lund is here with the details. Catherine.
Yes, child benefit is a payment normally paid to the mother, though other adults may be able to claim this if they are responsible for a child. Now, child benefit is currently £25.6 for the first child, and then £16.95 even a week for each additional child. It's usually paid every 4 weeks, and it's tax-free.
Yes, they're very useful, but it stops when the child reaches a certain age.
Yes, payments will automatically stop on the 31st of August after the child reaches 16. But if they are continuing in approved education or training after their exams, then it can continue, but only if you ask. A-levels, Scottish Highers, T-levels, some MVQs, even homeschooling can all count in many cases.
And how do parents and others who get the child benefit renew it?
The letter, which they should have had by next Wednesday at the latest, has a QR code which they can scan to go straight to the right page on the gov.uk website to update their claim online, or they can go to that webpage directly.
Thanks, Catherine. If you haven't received a letter by Wednesday, or if you have one and lost it, go to gov.uk and search Child Benefit 16 and do it before the end of August. So, big day Wednesday, child benefit claims, King's Speech, and also inflation figures around. I can't wait. And of course, Moneybox Live on housing in the afternoon. Let us know your thoughts and those on any other money topic. Moneybox@bbc.co.uk. We do read them all, and as you've heard, you might get on the show. Emails already coming in. Lynn warns that it's good for low earners, but higher minimum wages could be catastrophic for the service sector. Now make sure you hear next week's show by subscribing to BBC Sound to get the programmes delivered to your devices exclusively a couple of hours before the broadcast. Waiting breathlessly for that exciting Wednesday is the Moneybox team. Today's reporters, Dan Whitworth and Patrick Allen, researcher, John Principal Studio Manager.
And this is BBC Radio 4. Any questions is coming up after the roadblock, please. Then add to any answers. Anita Armand's Anita, what are you always talking about today?
Well, Richard, tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. How exactly can we make prison work? Thousands of prisoners are said to be released early to stop prison overcrowding. The system, we are warned, is about to collapse. So what should the new government do to fix this? It's really up to you, from people working in the justice system, people with experiences in prison, and victims of crime. When it comes to crime and punishment in this country, what should we do? 03700 100 444. The Labour government has vowed to recruit 6,500 new teachers. What have they all been hiding? That's the question for the question. Are you prepared to change career and maybe go into teaching? Maybe you've tried that already. Head teachers, love to hear from you. Do you see this happening? Have you heard these promises before? And to parents and grandparents, is your local school understaffed? What is it like? 03700 100 444 is the number. You can email any.answers@bbc.co.uk. Text 84844. Text will be charged at the standard message rate. Or tweet us, X is for free, #BBCAQ. All lines open now.
Comedy now. I think it's all over.
Hello, I'm Andy Zaltzman. Welcome to the News Quiz as the countdown to the 2029 general election begins in earnest. Our teams this week are of England's equaliser in Wednesday's Euro semi-final and what the French electorate have just chosen to do. We have Team Dodgy Pen against Team Dodge Le Pen. On Team Dodgy we have Angela Barnes and Zoe Lyons. And on Team Dodge, Ian Smith and the freelance political journalist and author Marie Leconte. Our first question in this week's news quiz will go to Angela and Zoe, who has spent the week basking in the aftermath of an astonishing personal triumph that many people had thought was beyond him.
Well, I know this, Andy, because I was there actually as it all unfolded. Of course, you're referring to Lewis Hamilton winning his 9th British Grand Prix at Silverstone.
No, that's not the answer I've got written down, I'm afraid. No, let's pass this over to Ian and Marie, who spent the week basking in the aftermath of an astonishing personal triumph that many people thought was beyond him.
Well, it's sport, Gareth Southgate.
Can we try and focus? We've had one final go. Who spent the week basking in the aftermath of an astonishing personal triumph that many people thought was beyond him?
Must be Mr. Stone.
Correct, Zoe. Final. Yes, let's have some focus, please. And how's the week treated you?
It's been very windy this week. I think it's just everybody breathing out.
It is comedically difficult.
Give them time, Ian.
I think something will go wrong soon. I'm really hoping that Starmer gets pressured by a small minority of the Labour Party to hold a referendum on whether we get rid of the moon. Something like that, just to get it
Are
going.
you a keeper or a do the referendums. It's that time. Let's look at Labour's first week. That rather mountainous interim. Rachel Reeves, the new Chancellor of the Exchequer, complained this week that she has inherited the worst what?
I think she's complaining about the general circumstances.
Yes, correct.
She's inherited an absolute mess. I think I mean, maybe quite rightly at first, but it does look like she could use this as an excuse for not doing anything for quite a long time. If you kind of set up, it feels a little bit like, you know, when you go into a cubicle and you're like, oh, this is terrible. And you go to go out of the cubicle to pick a new one, but someone's already waiting outside that cubicle, and you've got to look at them and go, I didn't do any of that. That's nothing to do with that. I inherited that from the previous. So it seems like she's in that situation, but instead of a toilet cubicle, it's the entirety of Britain.
Well, particularly with the economy.
Yes.
Right? And to be fair, you know, none of us really know what the true state of the economy is. She's going to do a review and they'll be, you know, try and work it. But they could say anything, because I think to most of us, when we hear about the economy, it's a little bit like a drunk girl crying outside a nightclub. Like, you know there's something's wrong, but you'll never make out what it is.
Yes, it's the worst set of economic circumstances since the Second World War. Is that fair, right?
Obviously, the thing is, although I did really enjoy it when we were here a while, I said, oh, well, you know, when the Conservatives came in 2010, they looked at no from Labour saying, oh, sorry, there's no money left. So clearly this is not a new problem. And I think it was Darren Jones, who's another chief secretary to the Treasury, who said they couldn't even afford paper this way round.
Our next question takes the form of a misleading headline. Obviously, headlines don't always tell us the full story, but there is a genuine story behind this misleading headline. I've got here Angela and Zoe. You can have this one. Government to bury Milton Keynes under 2 layers of housing.
This is about the housing policy of the new government, and it's quite exciting for someone like me because I'm quite into urban planning. You've got cricket, I've got urban planning. Which one of us is going to be most useful come the apocalypse? That's all I'm saying. But what I think it's a good thing, this Green Belt, because basically it's so people think the Green Belt is all, you know, animals are farming woods and beautiful green. But a lot of it is just, you know, derelict buildings and rubbish that like badgers have built on petrol stations or something. I don't know. But a lot of it is land that's known for why not.
A badger's built a petrol station.
I didn't think you'd notice I'd said that, but no, I think that's what people think that Greenbelt is, you know, this beautiful idyllic place, but it isn't. A lot of it's brownfield work. So let's snatch some of that back. And the only thing I ask is that if we are going to build on Greenbelt land, can we please make some of it affordable housing? But the most important thing is that when they do build it, can they please just build it where Jacob Rees-Mogg can see it out of his window?
Well, I've said it before and I'll say it again. Tarmac the Lake District.
Working on that one?
Yeah, well that's an idea I've been pitching.
Okay.
Tarmac the Lake District. TTLD for short. The Lake Districts, I mean, other than Kendal Mincay, I don't mind if it's completely tarmac. Keep the wet bits, I think that's what the geographical term for them is.
I am quite confused about how they decide the difference there between Grey Belt and Green Belt. Like, is it literally the idea of sending someone to different bits of the Green Belt going, lovely, you're going,
Grey Belt is usually bits that have been built on, so like brownfield sites and things where there's been stuff built on it. Yeah.
To take out in which days.
No.
I don't know if I'm qualified for colour code of the entire country.
I don't think anyone's asking you to.
I'm willing to step up to the plate. TTLD, Tarmac the Lake District.
Education. Labour has confirmed plans to acquire thousands of new Watts for Britain's schools.
is it perhaps teaching?
It is. What's the thinking behind that when we have the internet and there's no point children learning anything because we are just dusting ruins of history?
It has been quite interesting actually, I think, this past week, the Labour government, because they've just been doing stuff. So when they came in, they were like, well, we're lacking teachers, so we're going to hire teachers. It's like, they didn't think of that last time.
They've got a target of 6,500 teachers, which if they don't meet it, of course, it'll be their own time they're wasting. going to fund it by putting VAT on them, by school parents, private school kids are very cross about that.
I had some good teachers. I had a teacher called Mr. Harris, who, if kids were talking, he would just point at the window and say, someone's going to get flying lessons. So he was just threatened to kill a child. And I've changed Mr. Harris's a fake name because I'm aware that you're probably not allowed to say that to children, and I don't want Mr. Ross to get in any trouble.
Another question now. What, according to Keir Starmer, is, quote, much worse than he had thought?
Being Prime Minister. Larry the Cat's reign of terror.
This is the prison crisis.
Yes.
Because we already knew the NHS was under stress, and this week it's been revealed that prisons are under stress as well and they can't cope. But I just think, God, if we can't rely on our hospitals and our prisons, where are people like me supposed to find love?
Also, how are the prisons full if we've just taken all the post office workers out of them?
Let's look now at the makeup of the new cabinet, the new parliament. Labour has appointed a cabinet containing a record number of whats.
People who are not Van Hancock.
We're certainly improved on certain recent cabinets for that.
Women, perhaps?
Correct, yes.
I think I should probably take the lead on this story. If I can get a word in edgeways, please.
There's also more state school educated
Yes.
people than there's ever been before, which I think can only be a good thing. So I don't think just because you went to a private school, just because you went to Eton or whatever, means you're, going to be the best leader just because you can speak Latin.
Well, I mean, I went to an all-boys private school. I studied Latin and Greek very much like Boris Johnson, also like Boris Johnson and many other members of the former cabinet. I never held down a proper job. Where I diverge from them is that I am fully aware that this makes me completely unsuitable for top-level politics.
I was taught by nuns in Ireland in the 70s, and I turned out all right.
So 335 new MPs as a result of the election. Amongst them is one who was the first ever member of parliament to have done what? Anyone?
Is that be born in this century?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Correct.
Sam Carlin. He's so cute. I know that's the wrong thing to say, and it's really patronising, but you're like, oh. It is weird that there's an MP that I'm old enough to be their mum without even being a slag.
It does show how disastrously our education system has collapsed, because, I mean, we could always rely on it previously to crush the confidence out of all children. Yes, we've let that slide.
It means there's like probably the biggest gap between the oldest and youngest. The oldest MP, Sir Roger Gale, is 80 years old, and that means our oldest MP is still someone that Joe Biden would ruffle their hair and call, come here, you little scamp.
Any other new MPs that caught your eye?
Yeah, there's quite a few interesting ones. So, Labour's Rachel Taylor used to be a Wimbledon umpire. There's Ros Savage from the Lib Dems, is the only woman to have rowed solo across the Atlantic, Indian and Pacific Oceans. There's a couple that I've found that haven't made the news. Harold Winchester has the record for assembling a Mr. Potato Head upside down. And that's as in he's upside down while he's doing the potato head. Caroline Horton was a semi-finalist on Britain's Got Talent for being able to wet herself on demand. There's a guy called Michael Wright. You're not going to believe it, he hatched from an egg and no one really knows why. And then Pauline Wellers, who's got the record for assembling a Mr. Potato Head upside down, but in this case, the potato head. And she's normal.
Starmer's made various ministerial appointments from outside his parliamentary cohort of MPs. For our next question, our panellists have to match the experts to their ministerial position. Okay, so the three experts and three ministerial positions. You have to tell me which expert has got which position. So the experts are a scientist, an expert on prisons, and a high-ranking lawyer. And the ministerial posts are science minister, Prisons Minister, and Attorney General, government's chief legal advisor. Now, if you're a long-term politics follower, this is a bit of a trick question. Anyone match them up? Zoe, Angela?
I think, Andy, it's a scientist as a science minister, the prisons expert is going to be a prisons minister, and the lawyer is going to be Attorney General.
Correct. 3 out of 3.
I do really like though that James Timpson has a key cutting business. Like it is a proper movie for kids about crime because he's now the prisons minister.
Yeah, because he does a really good thing where like Timpsons employ a lot of like former convicts at their workplace, and I cannot stress how much I think that is a brilliant thing. But yeah, what I will say is key cutting. If someone's just come out of prison, like what were you in for? Oh, I robbed a load of houses. But you want to learn how to make all the keys? It's a mad system, like, right? Yeah, you can even do key cutting. We've got a balaclava factory if anyone wants to learn.
And can anyone tell me what will have to happen to these experts before they can become government ministers?
They'll have to be ennobled, is that what
Yes.
you call it? Yeah. They'll have to become lords, because
Yes.
they're not MPs.
So they've got to sit in the House of Lords. That's
Yeah.
so they get. Well, that's easy, isn't it? 'Cause you just got to turn up, fall asleep, get 305 quid. It's the opposite of going to the opera.
But you still get to dress up in your nice furs.
Yeah, exactly.
Nice.
Marie is someone who's moved to this country and writes about our politics. Can you explain the House of Lords after the 15 years of living here?
Do I have to? I think it's not necessarily about system. And again, it feels very novel to just bring people in the House of Lords because they're going to do jobs as a general kind of pat on the back, which is what it's become, I think. And especially the fact that I think Chris Grayling, nicknamed Failing Grayling, you may remember, will now also be joining the House of Lords thanks to the outgoing Conservative government. And it's a bit like, oh yes, I suppose we could have just this entire time just put good, interesting people in the House of Lords and then give them jobs instead of going, well, you seem pleasant, and off you go, have money for the rest of your life.
Yes, it's been a difficult week as the nation adjusts to a period of change and transition. No more Jimmy Anderson, no more Andy Murray at Wimbledon. How will we cope? Incoming Chancellor Rachel Reeves said Labour has inherited the worst set of circumstances since the Second World War, and we've all had disappointing inheritances: an unwanted vase, a politically incorrect sideboard with a weird engraving of Mozart and a wildebeest, Auntie Muriel's collection of contraband Victorian taxidermy badgers, those haunting eyes, those sad, sad tales, Grandad's generational blood feud with the Sicilian mafia, just me on that one, or the Zaltzman paternal family hairline. One of the purposes of the new National Wealth Fund Labour has announced is to invest money in new technologies that might not otherwise attract investment, such as decarbonisation, green hydrogen, or my latest invention, plastic-free invisible gas Lego. Don't tell anyone, it's just air, but it's all about the branding. Right at the end of that round, the scores are 11 to Angela and Zoe and 8 to Ian and Marie. Let's look at democracy around the world. Marie and Ian, you can have this question. Which prominent European nation has decided it would be wrong to go right?
France.
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. Oh no, I meant to talk about it now.
Oh yes, yeah.
If you insist.
Don't worry, I've got this one covered.
Well, no, so in a nutshell, we had European elections a few weeks ago. They went quite poorly, by which I mean the far-right Rassemblement National was the biggest party, at which point Macron was like, well, not quite I quit, but just and so decided to call some snap legislative elections. So that's the bit where you vote for the National Assembly sort of MPs. Macron was not going anywhere. I know some British people got confused about that. But so yes, that happened. The first round was, again, I would describe it as unfun, probably, in that the Rassemblement National came first again. But in the meantime, so all the left parties had managed to form a coalition together, which I think was genuinely brilliant to see, because there's nothing the left hates more than the left. And so for them to actually manage to create this kind of front from the far left to the centre left with the kind of Greens in between was really well done. And so yes, we had a second round which was very stressful, and actually the far right came third. So we had the left coalition first, and then the second was Macron's party, the centrists, and then the far right. And now there is no government.
Utopia.
I was going to say, is that a bad thing? What happens now then? Voilà.
A lot of shrugging, basically.
That's exactly how
Yeah.
I put it. No, well, essentially, again, so all three won just under a third each, and they just do not want to work with each other. And that's kind of where we're at. And I genuinely wish I could tell you more. And, in the sort of, but, if you're really an expert and you understand what's going on, there's lots of subtleties. There's not.
There was something that didn't really vet their candidates very well, the far right, didn't they? So one candidate promised, if people voted for her, she said, "I will stop making racist jokes if you vote for me." And you're like,
No, but I think, what's quite nice is that she lost, so she can just keep being racist.
Yes,
So the French election remains in a state of considerable confusion. I think it suits the French psyche quite well. We have won, but we have also lost. I took a gamble, it paid off, and it backfired. The duck was at the peak is like a sofa in a paddling pool. Macron attempted to clear the muddying waters of French politics by lobbing a hippopotamus into them, and it sort of worked. The only problem is now there is a hippopotamus. Things turned ugly on the streets. One report said that two members of a Parisian string quartet hit a baker with their Stradivariuses. The baker retaliated by whacking the musicians with 2 sticks of French bread, and the musicians then clonked the baker once again with their instruments, which goes to show violins, baguettes, violins.
You look so pleased with yourself.
My ear, to be honest. Right, let's move across the Atlantic. Who said he is not going anywhere?
So me immediately after I've had a roast dinner.
So it's me and Zoe, because we both live in Brighton. We're on the Southern Rail line, so we live here now.
It's Joe Biden.
It is.
It's Joe Biden, who is, oh dear. I mean, I've got a 17-year-old Jack Russell, and he doesn't know where he is either. He's not in charge of the world's most powerful country, so I'm less bothered about that. But he clearly isn't up to the job at the moment. He really, really isn't. And the only person that's going to take him out of that position apparently is the Lord Almighty.
Yes.
So, which sounds quite dramatic. But, I mean, the thing about it is, he's only 3 years older than Trump. Trump has done that incredible thing of being both alive and mummified at the same time. I think Trump is like one of those fast food burgers that if you put it in a cupboard, it just won't decompose.
Yeah.
If you dug him up, they'd be like, that's Trump, he's just made up of highly preserved burger meat and Dorito dust. That's it.
And he'll probably still be riding quite high in the polls at that
He'll probably
point.
be doing well. People who were originally behind him after the debate, there was a lot of sort of Democratic support for him. So, but then this week, George Clooney, one of the biggest Democratic fundraisers, has come out and gone, he's not up to the job. And he should know because he was an ER doctor for a very long time. It's his family, really, though, isn't it? It's Jill Biden. And we all know why. People hate it when their spouses retire.
I think that the problem is, you mentioned earlier, Trump is also, but the difficulty for Biden is that people won't vote for Biden because they think he might be mad and detached from reality. Whereas for Trump, people want to vote for him because he is mad and detached from reality.
Because he's basically said, only God can stop me, which immediately he's already forgotten about natural causes. But I think your best chances is to get the staffer to dress up as God and convince him he's having a vision.
Yes, amongst the possible candidates who have been rumoured to be being lined up to step in to replace Biden include Vice President Kamala Harris, anyone who can talk coherently for more than 12 seconds, Big Bird from Sesame Street, Andy Murray, and the late Franklin Delano Roosevelt. Watch this space. Keir Starmer saw Joe Biden this week. Reportedly, was going to give him what?
Is it a head start in the world leaders 100 metre? It was an Arsenal shirt.
Correct.
Presumably with his name on the back so we can remember it.
Yeah, he said Biden was on really good form.
You shouldn't have to say that.
That is what you say after visiting somebody in the care home, isn't it?
He ate all his dinner.
Very happy to take.
Right, the
Scores at the end of our World Democracy round. It's now 15 to Angela and Zoe and 12 to Ian and Marie. We'll finish off now with some more misleading headlines on other news stories from the week. Ian and Marie, since you're behind, you can have this question. The headline is Japan to make news quiz compulsory. Can you explain the truth behind that headline?
Well, laughter, I think, or puns about baguettes and spoons. Yeah, they're saying that everyone, like, almost want to make it a law that everyone should laugh at least once a day. Yeah. And that's annoyed a few people who are saying it's our constitutional right not to laugh. And a few people have been exercising that tonight. I've spotted you. So it has caused controversy of basically enforced fun.
Yeah.
Apparently laughing once a day reduces the risk of heart attack. And I just think, God, it's always something, isn't it? With red wine reduces the risk, dark chocolate. One day, I'm just waiting for the headline of having a heart attack once a day reduces the risk of having a heart attack.
Yes, the Yamagata prefecture in Japan has passed a law requiring residents to laugh at least once a day. Business operators are being asked to develop, quote, a workplace environment that is filled with laughter. That has to be the right kind of workplace laughter, though. Nervous, awkward laughter, well, history shows that can result in you being turfed out as Prime Minister after 49 days. It has to be the right kind of workplace as well. A laughter-filled environment is fine in, for example, a comedy club, less appropriate in a funeral parlour, or even a cockpit. We're going to land safe. We're going to land safe. Not reassuring. This can go to Ian and Marie. The headline is Disastrous July gets even worse for Scottish nationalists. What's the story behind that?
Well, I guess it's probably either got to be football or Nicola Sturgeon's house has been raided again.
It's football, yeah.
What a glorious game, and another 90 minutes of utter tedium, and followed by one inspired moment at the end. It's given me my favourite moment of the Euros, which was Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank, who's part of the England staff, celebrating wildly and then remembering that he is Dutch.
My partner's Dutch, so it was quite exciting. She only got to show her knickers with the words goal written on the back once, so...
I do feel I'm desperate for Gareth Southgate. Even more than England want Gareth Southgate to win, because I feel like he's got all these demons from missing the penalty, that I think if England win, he's going to open his mouth in a scream and just loads of black smoke will come out. And then he'll just be free. He won't even know where he is or what he's been doing. Just sort of like, oh, what? Have we won?
Well, what if he opens his mouth and white smoke comes out? I think that means the Pope has to become England manager.
I know I'm a bit ignorant because I don't know much about football, but I don't really understand how a manager can make that much difference to how a team plays. It's like, what? They don't have a manager, what? They just sit on a pitch and make daisy chains. They don't know what to do. And every man I've ever met thinks he would be the best England football manager. Let's just make it like jury service.
That's a good idea. You get a couple of weeks a year.
Yeah.
I'm writing that down.
I do love an England game. Like, you've got to love an England game because for that glorious, like, 90 minutes, or usually more, of an England game, all the knobheads are contained. Like, they're all in their pubs and their houses. You can go into a Lidl, it's like a Waitrose, isn't it?
If you think putting a firework up your arse makes you a knobhead, then shame on you.
I just like them winning because I live next door to a pub and it makes it less likely that my car will be set on fire.
Yes, well, another great triumph for Labour Party. 14 years of Tory government and the England men's football team won only one tournament semi-final. Labour's going at a rate of one a week at the moment. Now, whether they can keep that going remains to be seen. Spain await in Sunday's final, no doubt bracking themselves at the auspicious 1966 coincidences that point the way to an inevitable England win. Labour election victory. Tick. England winning their semi-final 2-1. Tick. Rolling Stones still going strong. Tick. Joe Biden a bit past his best. Tick. Russian government clamps down on dissent. Wars going on around the world. Middle East a bit tense. Tick, tick, tick. It's all building up. Charles Dickens being dead. Tick. Glasgow being further north than Melbourne. Tick. Zebra eaten by lion on a Monday in June. Tick. It's written in the stars, people. Well, that brings the end of this week's news quiz, and our winners are Angela and Zoe by 15 points to 14 over Ian and Marie. Thank you very much for listening. Until next week, goodbye. Taking part in the news quiz were Angela Barnes, Marie Lecomte, Ian Smith and Zoe Lyons. In the chair with me, Andy Zoltzman, and additional material was written by Alice Fraser, Cody Darlow, Katie Sayer and Peter Toulouse. The producer was Pete Strauss, and it was a BBC Studios audio production for Radio 4.
Andy Zoltzman will be back at the same time next week with the last news quiz of the series. Before the news, time for a look at the weekend weather with Chris Fox.
Hi Richard, thanks a lot. Well, we've got an area of low pressure in the North Sea that's essentially going to stay with us for the next 24 to 48 hours throughout the weekend, really. That'll be why it's raining across parts of eastern England at the moment, and it's going to continue to be quite damp across these eastern areas as we go on through the rest of today, tonight and into tomorrow as well. So a lot of cloud coming from that area of low pressure. Forecast in detail for England and Wales, expect quite cloudy skies really to continue through the rest of the day today. There will be some rain at times, particularly running into parts of northeast England, through Yorkshire, Lincolnshire, and at times moving into parts of Norfolk as well. A few showers elsewhere, one or two coming into North Wales and northwest England, but we've got some heavier showers developing around southern coastal counties, so they'll be affecting areas from Devon eastwards through to Sussex. Some of those showers will turn heavy with some thunderstorms mixed in, so one or two pretty big downpours. Temperatures around the North Sea coast really struggling today, just 14 to 17 degrees, well below average for the time of year. Otherwise, we'll see temperature around 18 and 19, and in the best of the sunshine, I think we'll get to around 20 or 21 into parts of Cornwall. That will be some of the warmest weather we'll see across the whole of the country today. For Northern Ireland, we've got broken clouds, some sunny spells, and just one or two passing showers. Temperatures around 18 degrees Celsius this afternoon. And the forecast for Scotland, well, for eastern areas, it stays rather cloudy, and that will probably thicken at times to bring some patches of light rain or drizzle from time to time. A cool day, just 14 degrees in Aberdeen. The average of this time of year is 18. Further west, a few breaks in the cloud, so a few sunny spells are possible. Overnight tonight, it stays predominantly cloudy, still with a bit more rain to come across eastern Scotland and eastern England. Temperatures overnight 10 to 12 degrees. Tomorrow, stays cloudy and damp for many across eastern areas of the country. But elsewhere, morning clouds should break up with some sunny spells coming through and turn a bit warmer. Temperatures more widely 19 to 22. That's the latest.
Thanks, Chris. Any questions from St Cuthbert's Church in Darlington is coming up after the news. Then, later this afternoon, our drama is a story inspired by real events in China. A Uyghur family living under surveillance are assigned a live-in auntie who has ulterior motives. Drawing on testimonies from the Independent Uyghur Tribunal in 2021, breaking the rules. This week is Family Week. It's at 3 o'clock. On FM, on BBC Sounds, and on your smart speaker, you're listening to BBC Radio 4.
BBC News at 1 o'clock. This is Alan Smith. More than 70 people are reported to have been killed in an Israeli airstrike in parts of Gaza where Palestinians have been told to shelter. Israel says the target was the Hamas military chief. Police investigating the discovery of human remains in suitcases have arrested a man in Bristol on suspicion of murder. They say it's a significant development. The Princess of Wales will be at Wimbledon tomorrow to present the trophy to the men's champion in only her second public appearance since her cancer treatment. And just one last push to finish the job. Prince William's message to England's footballers on the eve of their Euros final. The Hamas-run health ministry in Gaza says 71 people have been killed in an Israeli airstrike near the southern city of Khan Yunis. Nearly 300 more are said to have been injured in the densely populated Muazi area where Palestinians have been sheltering. The Israeli army said it was targeting the Hamas military chief Mohammed Deif, a claim Hamas has dismissed as false. Our correspondent Nick Beak sent this report from Jerusalem. Videos from the Mawassi safe zone show smouldering wreckage and bloodied casualties being loaded onto stretchers. People tried to pick through the rubble of a large crater with their bare hands, as relatives are consoled nearby. Witnesses described it being like an earthquake when 3 fighter jets opened fire. Israeli sources confirmed the head of Hamas's military wing, Mohammed Deif, was the target of the strike. He has been one of Israel's most wanted men for years and is presumed to have been a key figure in the planning of the October the 7th attacks. An Israeli official said most of the casualties were, in his words, terrorists. It's not yet clear whether Mohammed Deif is among the many dead. Police investigating the deaths of 2 men whose remains were found in suitcases in Bristol have made an arrest in the city. They've described it as a significant development. Human remains were also found in Shepherd's Bush in West London, from where Simon Jones reports.
It was in the early hours of this morning that a manhunt lasting for more than 2 days and covering 2 cities came to an end. A 34-year-old man was detained by armed officers at Bristol Temple Mead Station. That was after the remains of 2 men were found in suitcases that were dumped at Clifton Suspension Bridge late on Wednesday night. Yesterday, officers found further human remains at a flat in Shepherd's Bush in West London, believed to be from the same 2 men. People living nearby have spoken of their shock.
Horrific and horrible. I just can't believe that it's so near to us, and this is very disturbing, to say the least.
It's not unusual. I'm being quite honest now, it's not unusual. And we've had a couple of stabbings and things. It's not pleasant, it's upsetting, quite honestly.
Last night, police named the suspect they were looking for as a Colombian national called Yossin Andres Mosquera. Following this morning's arrest, they say they are not looking for anyone else in connection with what happened. Officers believe they now know the identities of the 2 men who died. They are still trying to trace their families. Forensic examinations have continued this morning here at Shepherd's Bush. Police say they want to try to reassure the local community after what they're calling this tragic incident.
Kensington Palace has announced that the Princess of Wales will attend the Wimbledon men's final tomorrow, where she'll present the winner's trophy to either Carlos Alcaraz or Novak Djokovic. Catherine, who's undergoing cancer treatment, has not been seen in public since last month. Nick Johnson reports.
The Wimbledon men's final will be only the princess's 2nd public appearance since she revealed she was having cancer treatment in March. Her first was at Trooping the Colour last month. Catherine's treatment for cancer is ongoing, and very careful choices are being made about when and how she appears in public. The princess is a devoted tennis fan, a keen player, and in her capacity as patron of the All England Club, would usually present trophies at both the men's and women's finals. While she won't be at the women's game this afternoon, it's understood that she's keen to attend tomorrow for the culmination of the championships. While Catherine is on centre court, her husband, Prince William, will be on his way to Berlin for England's Euro 2024 final clash against Spain.
The Prince of Wales has expressed his pride in the England squad, telling them on social media to show the world what they're made of. He said there was just one last push to finish the job. Fans are arriving in droves ahead of the Euro 2024 final in Berlin tomorrow. John Watson has been gauging the mood in the German capital. The countdown is on to tomorrow's final here in Berlin. Having followed England across Germany, the fans are arriving in full force, in the hope their team can deliver the trophy they so desperately crave.
It's coming home! It's coming home!
Is this the moment that England at long last deliver on the biggest stage?
I think it's going to be a once in a lifetime. For anyone of our age, I think it's going to be a once in a lifetime.
3-1 England, and I think Saka's going to score, Bellingham's going to score, and Foden's going to score.
Absolutely unbelievable. We're going to go all the way. England's going all the way. Some supporters have spent up to £2,000 on a ticket to the game, in the belief that the 58-year wait for a major men's trophy could be about to end. The England manager Gareth Southgate has faced criticism for his side's performances, but has managed to guide his team to a first major final on foreign soil and now back-to-back European Championship finals. He knows his side faced their toughest test yet against the 3-time winners Spain, who have been one of the standout teams of this tournament. Having trained at their base for the final time today, the team will make the journey to Berlin later, with England now one win away from what would be an historic moment in English football. A new champion will be crowned at Wimbledon's women's final today for the 7th year in a row. Elsewhere, victory has escaped England and Wales in Test rugby. With all the day's sporting action, here's James Gregg.
We'll start with some rugby union, and England were beaten 24-17 in Auckland by New Zealand this morning. The All Blacks, who were defending a 30-year unbeaten run at Eden Park, responded after trailing 14 points to 13 at half-time to clinch the two-match Test series 2-0. Here's the England head coach, Steve Borthwick.
I think the team's making progress. We ultimately got ourselves in positions to win both these Test matches and unfortunately not being able to convert. So there's plenty of learning there for us that we'll take away and look closely at to make sure we're a better team going forward.
Meanwhile, Australia have just beaten Wales in Melbourne, 36-28 it finished, and though it's a 9th successive loss in Test rugby for Warren Gatland's side, there's been much improvement. Elsewhere, the atmosphere is building where I am ahead of the women's final between Barbora Krejcikova of the Czech Republic and Italian Jasmine Paolini. Whoever wins it later is guaranteed to be a first-time Wimbledon champion. For the 7th year in a row, former women's singles champion Marion Bartley admitted to having mixed feelings about that particular race.
I do love fairy tale stories, and I do love to have a new champion because it's just a moment that you will cherish forever. But I think it would be also great for the WTA, obviously, to have some girls that can, just build some rivalries and you see them towards the end of the tournament all the time.
That final gets going from 2 p.m. You can, of course, watch it on BBC One television. In cricket, England's men have added Mark Wood to the squad for Thursday's second test against West Indies. He's the only change to the squad, which won the first test by an innings and 114 runs, replacing Jimmy Anderson, who of course played his final test match at Lord's. Britain's Tom Pidcock has pulled out of cycling's Tour de France. His team, Ineos Grenadiers, say that he's experiencing symptoms of COVID-19. Ahead of stage 14, Tadej Pogacar holds the leader's yellow jersey with a lead of 1 minute and 6 seconds over the chasing pack. And Rory McIlroy starts the third round of golf's Scottish Open, 3 shots off the leader, the Swede Ludwig Åberg. He is on 12 under par, with the home Scotland's Bob McIntyre at 8 under.
James Gray. The remains of a 19th century British explorer due to arrive in his home village of Dollington in Lincolnshire within the next hour, ahead of a ceremony to rebury him at a local church. Captain Matthew Flinders is credited with mapping Australia, as Harry Parker reports.
The bells have been ringing out since 10 o'clock here in the small village of Donington in Lincolnshire, marking the return of the village's most famous son. Captain Matthew Flinders is best known for circumnavigating, mapping and even naming Australia in the early 19th century. But his remains were lost to history until 2019, when they were found during work on HS2 at Euston Station. Today, those remains return to Lincolnshire for a spectacle the likes of which this tiny village has never seen. 400 guests from Australia, Mauritius and across the country are expected for a spectacle involving standard bearers, the state ceremonial team from the Royal Navy and the Bishop of Lincoln. There'll even be an 18-gun salute. Darryl Slater has travelled from Perth in Australia to be here.
Oh, it's outstanding. Decorations all the way along the street, representing Australia and Flinders and exploring, and it's incredible. It's outstanding. It's a credit to the village, and it's a credit to everybody involved, and I'm certainly very appreciative, and I think this is where Matthew belongs.
Flinders' life was filled with long voyages around the world, but today is his very final journey, to be laid to rest in the church he was christened in.
A rare Beatles album sleeve signed by every member of the Fab Four is expected to fetch more than £20,000 at auction next week. The first pressing of their debut Please Please Me LP shows John, Paul, George and Ringo photographs from below, smiling and leaning over a balcony in the headquarters of EMI Records in London in 1963. On its back are the band's signatures and fountain pen. The headlines again. More than 70 people are reported to have been killed in an Israeli airstrike in part of Gaza, where Palestinians have been told to shelter. Police investigating the discovery of human remains in suitcases have arrested a man in Bristol on suspicion of murder. The Princess of Wales will be at Wimbledon tomorrow to present the trophy to the men's champion. BBC News.
The escape proved Northern Irish prison, holding those involved in the Troubles.
It's hard to explain the quite intimidating nature that was the Hitchbacks.
The Republican inmates making plans to leave.
There was never
overnight story of a breakout, unprecedented in scale.
Never mind 4 or 5 people. 40 kind of something. The knowledge of the day is that this is a big achievement by them.
Escape from the Maze on Radio 4 and BBC Sounds, starting this Monday to Friday at 1:45.
This is BBC Radio 4, now recorded last night. It's Any Questions with Alex Forsyth.
Hello and welcome to Darlington, a town powered by its railway heritage and rich in modern culture, sitting on the edge of the Tees Valley in the northeast of England. We are at St Cuthbert's Church, the Grade 1 listed masterpiece in the town centre that dates back to the 12th century. We are surrounded by glorious stained glass windows amidst the stone pillars. For 600 years it was the only church in Darlington. Now it's fundraising for some major renovations to bring it back into the heart of the community. Here with me is Alison McGovern, a Labour MP for Birkenhead, and a newly appointed Employment Minister in the Department for Work and Pensions. This week she said on social media, "When you grow up knowing what unemployment does to people, that's a reason to be political." Alison used to be a researcher in Parliament, and she was also Gordon Brown's Parliamentary Private Secretary. Andrew Bowie is the Conservative MP for West Aberdeenshire and Kincardine, and the Shadow Veterans Minister. In the last government, Andrew was Minister for International Trade, then Nuclear Energy, and before politics, he was an officer in the Royal Navy. This week, he was at his party's first shadow cabinet meeting and described the mood as sober after their historic election defeat. That's still how you describe it now, Andrew?
Yeah.
A fair description. Daniel Kebede is the General Secretary of the National Education Union, the country's largest education union with 500,000 members. Daniel is a qualified primary teacher with a law degree from the University of Wales, and he's taught all ages from early years to Key Stage 4. On Tuesday, he met with the new Education Secretary, Bridget Phillipson. Daniel, any insight into how it went?
Ooh, now that would be fun. It was very productive. It's very good to hear of a reset of the profession.
There we are. And Jill Rattett is a Senior Fellow at the independent think tank, the Institute for Government. She's also a Senior Fellow at the UK in a Changing Europe think tank, which says it provides impartial, research-based analysis of the critical issues facing the UK. Jill is an experienced former senior civil servant, having worked across the Treasury, Number 10 and the Department for Environment, Food and Rural Affairs. Darlington, please welcome your Any Questions panel. Okay, let's get things going with our first, which comes from Eleanor Winkworth. Hello, Eleanor.
Hello. Tough on crime, tough on the causes of crime. How can we make prison work?
Eleanor, thank you. So on Friday we heard from the Justice Secretary, Shabana Mahmood, about the fact that thousands of prisoners are set to be released early to prevent prisons running out of space. Shabana Mahmood said the policy would take effect from September. She warned of the total collapse of the prison system and a total breakdown of law and order without urgent action. Andrew Bowie, this is your inheritance, isn't it?
Well, I mean, decisions were taken over the last 5 years with the Conservative government, which led to a situation where, things were running pretty hot in the prison system, and decisions were going to be taken by Justice Secretaries of Conservative hue had we been in power to deal with the situation as it is right now. However, looking at the announcement today, we do wonder if more could not be done to deal with the huge numbers of foreign offenders within prisons. I do hope that Labour look at our plans to deport far more of the foreign offenders that are taking up space in our jails, as we were planning to do. And we have to also acknowledge, as we talk about this Conservative inheritance, we did actually build 13,000 new prison places. Decisions.
You promised 20,000.
Yeah, well, we delivered 13,000, and nobody can deny the situation was running hot when we departed office. Tough decisions do have to be taken, but I hope Labour are looking at all the options, and also I do hope that they're not running the risk of fear-mongering with some of the statements that have come out today.
Alison McGovern, are you fear-mongering?
No, and listening and reading what Shabana said today, I was imagining in my head the people who run our prisons and the civil servants in the Ministry of Justice whilst the general election was going on, and thinking about this situation getting worse and worse, and knowing that the new government, whichever party was elected, must come in and must take steps immediately, because we are in a terrible situation The prisons are so full that it's a risk, this situation. 18%, I think I'm right in saying, of people in our prisons are on remand, and their cases are not being heard because of the terrible situation in our courts. The situation in our courts is getting worse again because we're worried about judges sentencing people because of the situation in our prisons. So you can see how this situation goes round and round and gets worse and worse. So I think what Shabana's done is a necessary response to it. Steps, which also involve getting more police officers into communities so we can rebuild faith and you know, that connection between communities and their policing. I don't doubt that I will be challenged about how we're going to fund lots of things because the situation the country's in is not good. But I've now got the challenge I want, which is to try and fix it.
Okay. Daniel Covelli, part of Eleanor's question, how can we make prison work? Do you think that prison is the right approach in all cases?
I think the answers lie beyond prison, really. But look, in the last 30 years, the population of women prisoners has doubled. They are mostly in prison for non-violent offences, on sentences for 6 months or less. Many of them are drug dependent or have addiction issues. 2/3 of them have experienced domestic violence. Those women should not be in prison at all. And the social consequences of jailing those women are incredibly deep and incredibly severe. 95% of children that have a mother jailed are forced to leave the family home, often end up in the care system. But as I say, the answers lie beyond prison. If we want to bring down the prison population, we need secure housing, decent jobs that pay well, and people need to have a stake in this society.
What about this idea though, Daniel, the sort of basic idea that if you do commit a crime, there does need to be some sort of deterrent punishment? Do you accept that?
Well, I think we need to keep society safe, and nobody is saying that we want sex offenders and murderers released, and that isn't on the table. But there are many in prison at the moment who need support, therapeutic care and opportunity, and prison is a barrier to that.
Thank you. Jill Rutten.
Well, I think it's really interesting. You were all very positive about the appointment of James Timpson. I think that was one of the really interesting
He's of course a
things.
prisons minister.
As prisons minister, so who has a track record of using his family company to rehabilitate, offer opportunities to people leaving prison. I think what's really interesting about this appointment is to what extent does that mean that working with Shabana Mahmood, there was really going to be a sort of ambitious attempt to have a long-run strategy about prison. The problems that we've seen these announcements about today, do They should have been made actually a couple of months ago. We know that the then Justice Secretary, Alex Chalk, was pressing for that because this has been a very foreseeable problem which has been left to reap one of the new government. It's really interesting what we do to make sure that the decisions aren't deferred and ducked like that. But I do think it's really interesting to see whether James Timpson has been brought in not because he's a sort of interesting addition to the sort of ministerial banks, but he's actually there with a bit of a mission to look again, as the way Daniel suggested, at how do we actually reform the way in which we treat offenders, because we want to punish people where necessary, but actually we all want to reduce re-offending, give people real alternatives. And I think, if we can see some really bold moves backed by the cabinet, that would be a hugely positive step.
We talked about James Timpson, of course, who has a long history of working with ex-offenders. Let me tell you something he said in February. He said, we're addicted to sentencing, we're addicted to punishment. So many of the people in prison, in my view, shouldn't be there. A lot should, but a lot shouldn't. Alison McGovern, is this government looking at a different approach entirely? Because to the essence of the question, politicians like to talk tough on crime, but is the appointment of James Timpson signalling a different direction?
Well, I think that anyone would be hard-pressed to look at the situation described today, the mess we're in, and think, oh yes, this works. I think that, as an employment minister, I nearly said shadow employment minister there, I'm still getting used to it. As an employment minister, I'm desperate to think about how our job centres can link up with probation much better. And because we know that employment is really important for rehabilitation. So I do think that the experience that James Timpson has is very important. I think we want to see people properly rehabilitated and contributing to society. Unfortunately, today is not about that, and we do need people who are violent and serious criminals to be locked up for everybody's safety. We are wanting to get to that reform though, because I have no doubt that we can do better than this, and we must never be in this horrendous situation again that we're in.
Okay. Thank you all very much, and Eleanor, thank you for your question. Before we move on, I want to remind you all that you can have your say on anything that we discussed during the course of the programme, and we'd love it if you did. The number you need to call is 03700 100 444. That's for any answers, which takes place on the Saturday lunchtime after the Saturday edition of Any Questions. Anita Arnott is in the chair this Saturday, and she would love to hear from you. Right, our next comes from Fiona Renucci. Hello, Fiona.
For decades, we've struggled to recruit new teachers. The new government has promised thousands of extra teachers very quickly. Where are all these teachers being hiding?
Yeah, thank you. As you say, a promise from the new government to recruit 6,500 new teachers. Where have they all been hiding? Daniel Kennedy.
Well, we are currently in the depths of a very deep recruitment and retention crisis that's being driven by a number of things. Pay that has been held back over the last decade, workloads that have gotten out of control. But we're not only not recruiting teachers, we're also not retaining teachers. So the 6,500 new teacher policy announcement is welcome, but we really also need to retain the experience in our classroom, because for every 6 teachers you lose, you have to re-recruit 10, because many will not enter the state system, many will go abroad, many won't complete the course. So we really need urgent action to address the workload, the pay that has been held back to get that 6,500 in, but most importantly to keep it.
We of course do know, as you say, that retention's an issue as well as recruitment. You mentioned pay, Daniel Kennedy, and we also know we're currently waiting to hear from the government for the pay settlement for teachers for the next financial year. What are you pushing for, and what is the level you want to see to avoid possible strike action, which I think, as I'm right in saying, is on the cards?
Well, we would like to see inflation plus pay award for teachers. The independent pay review body has concluded. It concluded under the last Secretary of Education, Gillian Keegan. Secretary of State to publish it, but also to engage with us as a trade union. Teacher pay has been held back a quarter since 2010, so what we are looking for is an inflation plus pay award that takes a step towards a correction. We need to see a new direction of travel set by this incoming government that seeks to restore education and the teaching profession and all those that work in it over the course of a parliament, because quite frankly, our children deserve better. Darlington. In places like Darlington, if you're a secondary student, it is a rarity to have a subject specialist in your secondary school teaching you science. Now, our children really do deserve the best, but we're going to have to invest in our children.
So inflation, above inflation pay rise. Keir Starmer, the Prime Minister, already said the unions aren't going to get everything you want. Are you prepared to take strike action, Daniel Kebede, if you don't get inflation plus?
No teacher wants to engage in strike action. It's the last thing any of us want to engage in, and I certainly hope that the government open up talks straight away should the pay award not be what we expect.
Daniel Kebede, thank you. I did focus on pay there, but of course the issues that Daniel Kebede raised are wider, Alison Gowan. Where have these teachers been hiding? Where are you going to find them? How are you going to keep them?
Well, I think as we've heard, retention is also an issue. We do want to recruit more people into teaching, but retention is also an issue. And when I think about what our teachers have been through over the past decade, you know, giving our children the best start in life, I should imagine is important to everybody, but you think about what teachers had to do during the pandemic, what our kids went through, and now the knock-on impact of that. So our plan, yes, is to recruit more, but also to deal with things like Ofsted reform, which is needed, and also, you know, the curriculum review. I'm absolutely passionate about children in the country having a chance to do sport and music and creativity, because I think that's very good in the classroom. I think that helps self-expression and encourages, you know, good mental health and so on, as well as confidence for our children. And I think that we do need a reset in the relationship between the government and teachers. But it's all of these things together that will help us retain and attract more people into the teaching profession.
Jill Russell?
Alex, we've been here about 16 minutes. We've already discussed need probably for quite a lot more spending on prisons, probation, and now potentially more spending on education. And what's really interesting, I think, is the contrast, the debate we're having now with, if you like, the non-debate we had during the election, where actually we didn't address any of these fundamental service problems across the whole public services.
And on the essence of the question, Jill Rutter, about where are these teachers going to come from? I mean, and to the point that you are making, the Labour government has set out its programme for reform, but we also know, as you say, it's put itself in somewhat of a fiscal straitjacket. Jill Rutter, with your experience of government, do you think this ambition can be realised?
I think it's very difficult. This has got lots of problems to address, not just things like pay, where there's been a sort of compression of public sector wages, and obviously public sector unions are all saying, you know, we've actually borne the brunt of a lot of that austerity and seen our relative wages go down. That's why we have vacancy problems, makes the services less efficient. We have these retention problems, which mean actually you're offering much less good service than you would be with actually more experienced people who can bring on their younger colleagues. But we've also seen a compression of investment. That's one of the things we've seen in the lack of prison capacity. We've also seen it in some dilapidated schools and things like that. And that's why I think that, you know, when the government finally gets round to having the spending reviews, you know, not just its 1 year spending review to set budget, we don't have budget for 2025, 2026, but set spending plans for the rest of the Parliament, it really needs to say, actually, can we live within these fiscal rules we've got?
Daniel Kebede?
I would love to be able to say that the profession, education could wait, but that just simply isn't the case. Schools are on their knees, the staff that work with them are also, but the situation is just the same in health. Our public services have been decimated over the past decade. We need that investment, and we need it now. And the number one signal of a reset from this government would be to award the public servants, the teachers, the doctors, the nurses, a fair pay award and restore our public services and make them attractive professions to work in.
Andrew Bow has been waiting very patiently, but before I come to you, Andrew, I do just want to put this point to you, Alison, to allow you to answer about investment. The point that Jill Rutt has made and the point that Daniel Kibet has made about public services, because of course some things can be done without money, but some things just cost. Are you going to invest?
Well, this is why we identified, as part of our first steps, sources of extra resources that could be brought in, whether that's putting VAT on school fees, properly having, dealing with